Okay, everybody. Today we have Ken, the immigration attorney from the U.S., back on the channel again, and he's going to answer some of your questions. Stick around. Okay, thank you, Ken. I appreciate you coming back again on the on my channel. I appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm always happy to help your channel and help the people that follow you.
Appreciate it. And how was your New Year? What did you do? Anything special?
Yes, we actually, well, the Christmas and New Year's we actually spent on top of a mountain next to a 1,000 foot deep canyon, and we just spent the time together in our RV and seeing the sights. It was wonderful.
Oh, fantastic. And you're looks like you're back home now.
Indeed, yes.
Okay. Well, we had quite a few questions come in, and as always, I invite anybody to, if you have a question for Ken, to comment down below here. But so we had some questions. The first question was, does the sponsor that has joint responsibility have liability for the 40 quarters? So I guess what they're referring to is once you get married to a Filipino, you're responsible for her financially for 10 years or so many quarters, 40 quarters.
Yes, when you sponsor an immigrant, say you bring a fiance or you get married and bring her and maybe even her children to the United States, you sign a contract with the government and with her that you are financially responsible for her up to 125% of the poverty guidelines. And that can be found just by Googling 125% of the poverty guidelines for immigration. And that will pop up, and you will see for how many dependents that you have, what income that you have to guarantee, and then that income is what you have to guarantee for the spouse and the children. And you have to guarantee this. Basically, it says for 10 years, but it's actually 40 quarters, each quarter being 3 months. And you are responsible to support that person for the 40 quarters. Now, the spouse, once she's able to start working full time, she can have those quarters that she works count toward those 40 quarters. But even if you get a divorce, you're still responsible to make sure that she is supported at that 40 quarter level. And in fact, if you end up getting divorced within that time, even the state courts can enforce that in the form of alimony.
Okay, great. And I think, and we had, based on the comments, I think that's something that scares a lot of people. I think is that support for 10 years if things go wrong.
Yeah, the actual reality of it, though, is even though in my practice, I do both immigration and family law, and in my practice, I see so many people that get married and bring somebody from abroad. They end up getting divorced once the 2 years is up. The spouse gets a 2-year conditional green card, and I see that happen often. And that's anecdotal. The cases that I handle, of course, are the more difficult immigration cases, and I don't see very many of them getting divorced from the Philippines. There's other countries that are far more prevalent and likely to end up being divorced. And of course, the younger they are, the more likely they are to get westernized, and that becomes a reality too.
Sure.
So, just going over and getting an 18, 19, or 20-year-old, the maturity level is such that they're very
Right.
easily westernized. So that is a reality. But the good thing is it in the great scheme of things, it doesn't happen very often. It's kind of a very small minority of people split up. Most couples that get married to a Filipina are getting such a great woman that the marriage is wonderful
Sure.
and lasts forever.
No, you said that there's a few countries that have a higher rate of or a higher chance of getting divorced. Do you remember offhand what some of those are?
Well, of course, I'm looking anecdotally. So from my own experience, I see certain countries repeating again and again and again. The one I see most commonly is Brazil.
Uh,
But I also see some of the countries from the northern part of South America being that happening as well. But
hmm,
remember, since it's anecdotal, it
sure,
doesn't really represent doesn't represent any kind of statistic.
sure,
It's just my experience, and a lot of factors go into that, and particularly the main factor is spending enough time to develop enough of a relationship that you break through the superficiality of the relationship and find the depth of character that happens to be there.
sure. Okay, well, that's great. Well, let's go to the next one. So somebody asked, how many years of tax returns do you need to show for the application process? So if you're applying, I suppose, for a spousal visa.
Well, yes, a spousal or a fiance
Yes,
visa.
yeah.
The, there's two forms that are going to actually require the tax returns. Um, if it's a fiance visa, when the fiance visa is approved by USCIS, it transfers then to the State Department, and then they have the embassy process on her part there in the Philippines. And so, as part of her getting ready for that visa interview, it is highly advisable for the U.S. citizen to file what's called an I-134 affidavit of support. There's two different ones. One is the I-134 and the other one's the I-864. But for that interview, he should draft an I-134, sign it, and send that original to his fiance, along with 1, 2, or 3 tax returns. Now, the 2 and 3 years of tax returns are optional, and that's also for the I-864.
Okay.
But it's going to be dependent upon what is needed to show a trend of your income that you're going to be able to support her. So I just recommend send 3 years tax returns. Let them take a look at it, and that even if it's optional, you do it just simply because when it comes to people evaluating you, what establishes your credibility, and this is really a key thing that as lawyers we do this because I mean it really puts things over the hump, and
Mhm.
that is detail. And detail in questioning, detail in proving is what determines and establishes your credibility. So you send the I-134 along with 1, 2, or 3 years of tax returns to her. It may not even be asked for, but then it could be. And if they ask for it and you don't have it, then you have to reschedule your interview. Now the I-864 is done when she arrives here. And so if she arrives as your fiance, you then have to do the I-485, which is the affidavit, which is the application for the green card. If you do it, if you bring her over as on a I-130, which is bringing your spouse, then you have to go through the process of doing the I-485 application for a green card. And as part of that, you have to then file along with that, the I-864 affidavit of support. The I-864 requires that you provide at least one tax return, but the form requires that you state 3 years, the most recent 3 years of gross income. And so I always recommend attach the 3 years of that also. But remember, one thing is that a lot of people misunderstand, and that is when you are filing the I-864
Hmm.
affidavit of support, you have to prove that you are going to be able to support her from then on. So let's say that you are living on Social Security and the last 3 years, or you had a job in the last 3 years, you didn't make enough to meet the 125% of the poverty guideline. But this year you're going to, so you now qualify. Well, just because you have the last 3 years does not mean you won't be able to qualify, because the only thing you have to prove under the law is that you can support her when she comes. And so if it does show uh, too low of an income,
Hmm.
don't worry. You can add a joint sponsor, or if you're adding income, you can, and are going to make it. You just have to demonstrate that you are going to be supporting her at that level.
Okay. Now, as far as I understand, they're not even processing the fiance or spousal visas at this point. Is that correct? Is that still going on?
Well, I don't know that that's correct. And they're still receiving them because
Okay.
I've sent some and I've received receipt notices.
Oh,
The what's happening internally, yeah, that's the information that's come across, and that's the information that has come from the news media.
okay.
But I have learned over my 150 years of experience that the media is seldom actually ever fully correct, and so I advise my clients that this has happened, and I have sent some recently, and I
Hmm.
have received receipt notices. And
Oh, okay.
so what they're doing in practice in house may or may not be a slowdown or some processing internally. So I don't know. So I can't give a definitive answer.
Okay. And another viewer asks, how hard is it to bring, let's say, your Filipina wife's immediate family over? Like, let's say she wants her mom and dad to come visit, or maybe she wants them to live there, or her sister or brother. How hard is that to get a family member over once you guys are already married?
Well, the difficulty is in what status you're in. If you are a green card holder, the only ones you can bring are your spouse,
Hmm.
uh, an unmarried. I'm talking about her once she
Right.
gets here. So because sometimes people get a green card and their spouse is not a green card holder or a citizen.
Okay.
So a green card holder can only sponsor that person's spouse, unmarried children under 21, and
Okay.
unmarried son or daughter of any age, even adults. And the difference there is how long it's going to take. So USCIS establishes preferences. And so for
Hmm.
immediate family, like your unmarried children under 21, or your husband or wife, that can they can only there's an immediate visa available.
Okay.
So there's unlimited visas for your spouse and unmarried children under 21. However, if for those that are over 21 in all of the categories, parents and siblings and other family members,
Hmm.
there are only 266,000 visas issued each year worldwide. And so the problem becomes one of a backlog and how long it's going to take. Bringing your children that are unmarried and under 21 is going to take some time. Uh,
Okay.
if you don't bring them right away, it's going to take some time. It could take a year or 2 years. It could
Okay.
take a little longer, but I would say an average of 1 to 2 years. If you're applying for unmarried children over 21,
Hmm.
it looks like now about 8 years. It was several years ago as long as 10 years,
Wow.
but it does take time. So I always recommend that if a citizen is going to marry a Filipina, that if she has unmarried children under 20, actually under the young married small children, she should bring them with her instead of waiting.
Hmm.
Um, but that's a case by case basis because a lot of Filipinas have their children with family members, and they're gone for 2 or 3 years on as OFWs anyway.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe that wouldn't be an issue for them. One concern is a lot of Filipinas are reluctant to bring their children over right away because they want to make sure that their spouse is not going to become a control freak or abusive.
Sure.
Things are going to work out. And so there's a lot of issues there to consider, but it is difficult. But the one thing that's good is that a Filipina can get her green card, will apply for a green card when she gets here.
Hmm.
Um, then she can, if she's still married to, has a good relationship with, and living with her spouse, she
Hmm.
can become a U.S. citizen in 3 years. And she can retain her Philippine citizenship and be a dual citizen
Okay.
and get her citizenship. And then she, as a U.S. citizen, she can bring her children over and other family members. She can petition for parents of U.S. citizens as long as she's at least 21 years of age.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and even if something should happen and her spouse dies, she can still, as a widower, she can bring them.
Is it easier for her to be able to bring, maybe her mom and dad just want to come for a visit? Is it easier for her to, or is it easy for her family members to come visit if she's already a citizen and everything here? Or
Okay, well,
does it?
again, we're talking about after COVID and
Right.
after things open up. Um, yeah, the complexity in bringing somebody across is going to be based upon the likelihood that they can prove the likelihood that they are going to return to the Philippines. Um, and so the consulars in Manila are looking to see whether or not there's an incentive for the person to remain. So
Mm.
let's just say the parents have other small children that are there. They own land, they have a home, they have jobs. You know, they can show to the consular that they are likely to come. There's a letter request from the American citizen stating where they're going to stay, where they're going to travel to within the United States, show reservations for hotels or resorts or places they're going to go. Um, the more that they can prove the
Hmm.
likelihood that they're going to return, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to get that visa.
Okay. I think we have one more. I think you had mentioned last time, you said some states, your prior assets are somewhat protected, but how do you value your home at time of marriage to determine how much it has increased in value with home values rising at 8%? Let me see, maybe that wasn't a question. Let's see here.
Well, yeah, I think I understand the question.
Okay.
The Now, this is where I have to say now on my disclosure that although I'm an attorney at law, licensed in the state of Tennessee, now I can answer immigration cases, immigration questions worldwide about immigration in the United States because that's federal.
Sure.
But this becomes into an area of state law, and I'm only licensed to practice law in the state. Nothing that I'm saying here is to be construed to be creating an attorney-client relationship or considered to be legal advice. Having
Okay.
said that, different states have different laws when it comes to alimony. In most family law areas, pretty much everything's the same,
Hmm.
uh, with a lot of exceptions. But in the area of alimony, some states have done away with alimony, and the the issue becomes then of if something is going to be alimony, how do how it's going to be determined alimony. Now in Tennessee, the law is called equitable, which means it's not absolutely a 50-50, although in 99.9% of the time they deem it to be, that's not an actual statistic, but they deem it
Sure.
to be equal, exactly 50-50. Now there are marital property states like Wisconsin and certain others where it is divided equal half. Um, uh, but determining the value then is, first of all, what's equitable. Now, a judge can deviate from the 50-50 if it's going to, the only way to make it equitable. But I rarely ever see that happen. And there's a very specific reason when it does. To determine the value of something like your 401k or your house, that's what normally comes up.
Okay.
Um, so basically, what happens is alimony is based upon need and ability as the first factor. That is the threshold factor: need and ability, a big disparity of income. And and this happens a lot with stay-at-home moms,
Hmm.
where they have this, they're not working and haven't worked for years.
Sure.
But um, the other factors come in as fault in the divorce. Did somebody cheat? Did somebody turned out to be a drug addict or an alcoholic and you didn't realize it?
Okay.
I mean, these are the kind of factors. Evaluating a house, say the husband. Now I'm still keeping it in reference
Sure.
to the immigration and to the Filipina. Let's say the husband had a home before his marriage. Say he had the home for 10 years, and they got married and they came here. Now, if he signed a prenup or not signed a prenup, um, the value of that property at the time they got married is where you start the appreciation or accumulation. The same thing with the 401k.
Hmm.
Now, you stay married for 5 years, say, and then you get a divorce,
Okay.
and and uh, and typically divorces happen. This is anecdotally, but over my 31 years of practicing law, divorces happen at year 1, year 5, year 7, year 10, 14, 15, 18, and 21. And it's
Hmm.
amazing. They fall right within those years. Now, some fall outside of those, but
Hmm.
it is such a large majority hit at those times.
Interesting.
It creates patterns. But let's just say at 5 years, you get a divorce, and now you're going to now you take a look at that property. If
Hmm.
there's been a prenup, that property may be protected completely from state to state.
Yeah.
Um, if there is, even if there, if it's, even if there is a prenup, sometimes you can create a marital property interest where one was otherwise protected by the prenup, and
Hmm.
that varies from state to state. If there is no prenup, then the appreciation of value. So you determine what the value is today with either by agreement or with a an appraisal of what that her worth house is worth today, and then subtract what was worth at the time of the marriage. The
Okay.
same thing with 401k. And the big question is, and I think I read that in the question,
Hmm.
or read it into the question, is if you don't know what the value was at the time of the marriage, how do you determine that? And that does create some problems. And one way is that an appraiser can back up to that date and take a look at what similar houses were being sold at, and what the price per square foot is with similar features, and come up with a value.
Mm,
Other times you can take a look at what the assessed value was then, and determine and compare that with what the market values of properties were going for, what the percentage of it is, and then apply that percentage today. But that's not very accurate. So a good appraiser should be able to help figure that out.
okay, that's good information to have. And the last thing I was going to ask you, this wasn't a question anybody asked, but I'm just curious myself. What are some questions, or what are some things that disqualify Filipinas maybe when they're doing their interview at the embassy or immigration? What are some of the things that maybe could disqualify a Filipina that she might answer wrong, or that they're looking for? Do you know?
Yes, and that's an extremely good question, because it happens.
Sure.
Um, there, the consular is going to be looking for evidence of scamming, and
Okay.
evidence that they're just trying to get a green card. Now, it's not wrong for a Filipino to want to better their life, but what they're looking for
Hmm.
is a genuine relationship.
Okay.
And just like in my old law enforcement days, I could, I was a drug agent for a state in the United States. And
Hmm.
before that, I was a state police trooper. And just there's patterns of behavior, and patterns of way people tell you things that you get used to.
Hmm.
So what they're going to be looking for is evidence that she is a scammer, or evidence that the only reason is that she um, wants to get a green card. The devil is in the details.
Hmm.
The details I mentioned earlier, that the details determine the your credibility. There's also factors. There's also training. I was trained to tell when people are lying, and it
Hmm.
really helps me in my profession, but it really helped me a lot in law enforcement. But it
Sure.
also helps in all areas of investigation. So they're going to be looking closely at the details, the pictures. I've had clients come in with pictures, and just from the pictures, I could tell that this was not a real relationship.
Hmm.
um, they're posed pictures.
Hmm.
They're looking for whether or not he's been adopted into the family. They're going to be looking to see the depth of the relationship. And did it start out immediately 5 days after they met with her saying she loves him? If but a lot of people now don't keep record of their chats and their videos. And so the more that she can demonstrate through chats, emails, videos, what happened, what the experience was like when he came there to visit. You're looking for the subtlety. They're looking for the subtleties of the relationship, and whether or not it appears to be genuine. It's not perfect. Sometimes they allow people in um, that should have been disqualified, and they missed it.
Hmm.
A lot of times, and sometimes they don't bring in genuine people, and it's all based upon to what degree that they bring details to the interview. So I always recommend
Okay.
have a scrapbook, huge scrapbook of things that you chatted about, chats that you had, emails that you sent, messages that you sent, screenshots of texts, and have them a timeline of showing how this thing progressed.
Okay.
Photographs that you sent to each other of your daily life. And one of the things that they will look for is whether she sent photographs of things that she was doing that show of her daily life, like of her family and things she were doing, her friends and stuff, and schooling or work. So they show that it's not a scam.
Sure.
Those are the things that they're looking for, and a lack of detail can disqualify her. Of course, multiple multiple boyfriends over and being paid by boyfriends over time, and applications for fiancé visas can also happen, and multiple fiancé visas by the U.S. citizen can
Sure.
show that that he is not very good at determining the quality. So there's a lot of things like that, and a failure to convince the consular is is what can disqualify.
Okay, that's great information to have, because I think a lot of people are curious about that. Okay, well, Ken, I appreciate it. Appreciate your time as always, and if we can do this again, fantastic. So if anybody has any questions, comment down below. Guys, don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification to stay up to date, and hopefully we can talk again soon, Ken.
I would look forward to that, and I want to wish all of your viewers a very safe 2021, and hang in there, baby. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna make it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks so much. Happy New Year to you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Wow! Come on, can you move it over? I said, baby, I know you're on a roll. Sweet honey, let's take it